Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Trey Grayson. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics here at the Harvard Kennedy School. I want to welcome all of you to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum for tonight's address by Van Jones. To introduce tonight's speaker, Damilare Sonoiki is going to perform that task. Dom's a junior in Courier House, an economics concentrator from Houston, Texas, and is the president of the Harvard Black Men's Forum. And when I first started in this job last semester, we had a meeting with a group of undergraduate student leaders, and we went around the room and asked, who do you want to have us bring to the forum? Who would you like to have us come speak? And Dom said, my number one choice is Van Jones. And so I'm really pleased that we were able to really pleased we're able to have Van here, and maybe I get a reputation for delivering among the student leaders on campus. So Dom's going to have a formal introduction. Please join me in welcoming Dom. Thanks.
Thank you. Like you said, last year when the IOP kind of approached student leaders about people we'd like to see speak at the forum, BMF was really interested in hearing Van Jones speak. And we're really excited to have that suggestion become a reality today. Mr. Jones has been a great activist and a creative thinker, coming up with innovative solutions for problems facing America's middle and lower class, which we think is really important in BMF and we strive to do. Mr. Jones, as an advisor to the Obama administration, he oversaw, $80 billion in spending and in green recovery spending. He's got a great track record as an innovative and social entrepreneur, and he's co-founded 3 successful nonprofits: the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Color of Change, and Green for All. BMF members feel like Mr. Jones really exemplifies our core principles of brotherhood, manhood, and fidelity, and we're really excited to welcome him today. Thank you. Awesome. You guys are going with a BMF t-shirt? All right. Just brotherhood, manhood, fidelity.
That's good. That's good. Free stuff. Gotta love it. Oh, man. Well, first of all, thank you for picking me to come, and thank you for letting me come. I see my brother Amaha Casa in the back. You guys don't know, but give him a round of applause anyway. He's one of the great. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Amaha was one of the great leaders that we had in Oakland, a young social entrepreneur who came to Oakland and really finally figured out a way to get the community of Oakland and the labor movement working together for positive things. And we miss you in California. We're glad you're out here. I'm just happy to get a chance to talk about what's happening today. I'm throwing out my canned speech. I know you're sad. He's like, but we've seen it on YouTube so many times. Because something extraordinary is happening in the country. And I think it opens the way to a new economic possibility for the country. We are in a situation where I think it's easy to forget sometimes, those of us who are winning in this economy, how many people are not. We are in a situation where there are casualties of this great recession that have not been heard from yet and are just now being heard from because of this Occupy movement. But they're not a small number of people. About 20 million people who used to be in the middle class fell out of it a couple of years ago. What that means is these young veterans who are coming home, and we're all happy they're coming home, but they're coming home to no jobs. They're coming home to homelessness. The homelessness rate among these young veterans is extraordinary. Their unemployment rate is much higher than the normal population. 17 suicide attempts a day. 17 suicide attempts every single day by these young veterans. What are they coming home to? We have a generation of young people, many of you, who graduate every spring. That used to be a happy thing, right? You graduate, and the idea was, the world is your oyster. Well, I'm sure that's true for some of you, but a lot of people are graduating off a cliff into the worst job market since the Great Depression. Graduating off of a cliff with sometimes $50,000 in debt, $100,000 in debt. We changed the rules so they can never declare bankruptcy. So they're under that $100,000 debt burden, praying to get an unpaid internship for 2 years in America. Some people from some of the best schools in the country. We're a better country than that. We are in a situation where the people who we were taught to respect as young people are now being called public employees and kind of thrown under the bus. Well, these public employees, got to get rid of them. I never met a public employee when I was growing up. Did you? We call them teachers, cops, firefighters, nurses, librarians, the backbone of our economy. And somehow now they're expendable. They never abandoned us in a crisis, not one time. But we hit a little financial hiccup. We want to abandon 1 million of them this year alone. There's something wrong in the country. And what you're seeing now is the voice of the people finally bursting through. And I think that this is significant for you, those of you especially who are talking about doing something in public service. This movement is a judgment. And it's a judgment not just against the folks who are on Wall Street. It is a judgment against the folks in Washington, D.C., in both parties. And it's a judgment against the civil rights establishment and the social change establishment and the NGO establishment, all of us who have, for decades now, promised that change was on the way, promised that things are going to get better. Just click on this petition, things will get better. Write another check to us, things will get better. Come to this rally, things will get better. Vote for this candidate, things will get better. And people realize that things are not getting better. And help is not on the way. And that there are millions of Americans who now feel abandoned, not just by the Wall Street elite, but by the political class itself, meaning us. And this upsurge of energy and passion opens a doorway to a new kind of politics. I actually missed it the first time this dynamic began to bubble up in our country, because it was called the Tea Party. I'm on the left, it was on the right. I missed it. I missed the significance of it. But the Tea Party was the first kind of judgment on the political class, saying, listen, we don't think you guys have our interests at heart. And when I looked into the Tea Party to try to understand a little bit more about what was going on, I learned a ton. And here's what I want to share with you. This is what I think is happening in the country. There is a struggle now between democracy and plutocracy. Now, you guys are smarter than me. Anybody know what plutocracy means? You guys are at Harvard. I went to the University of Tennessee at Martin undergraduate, so I'm going to give you the cheat sheet answer. The cheat sheet answer is it's rule of, by, and for the rich. That's plutocracy. And there's a sense that's settled into the country now that not only is that what's happening, but that's acceptable. That people understand that the rules are being written for the people at the top. People talk about the occupation of Wall Street. I don't think the occupation of Wall Street is the most important fact in American politics. The occupation of Wall Street is a response and a reaction to the occupation by Wall Street of Washington, D.C. with their 20,000 lobbyists. That is the real occupation that is going on in America. And I think the American people have finally hit a tipping point where plutocracy, the idea that if you're rich enough, you can buy your own congressperson, you can buy your own rules, that the American dream has now been inverted. It used to be, the idea was, if you work hard and play by the rules, you can get somewhere. That's a good part of the American dream. That you don't have to be a certain skin color. You don't have to be from a family that's rich. You don't have to have a famous last name. You don't have to have a certain shape of your eyes or color. That if you work hard and you're willing to play by the rules, you can get somewhere. What is happening in this country, and I've seen it all across the country now, the people who are working the hardest are falling the furthest behind. They're working one job, two jobs, or they can't find a job. And they look over the other side of the tracks, and they see people who don't seem to be working in the same way, breaking the rules and getting ahead. No matter how hard the majority works, the quote-unquote 99% works, the sense is we can't succeed. And no matter how many times these other folks break the rules, they can't fail. Why? They're too big to fail. They're too big to fail. And I think that what you're hearing from the American people now is a sense that, hold on a second, when does the middle class get to be too big to fail? When do working families get to be too big to fail? When do our communities get to be too big to fail? When do these schools and these children and their dreams get to be too big to fail? And this is a judgment on all of us. And I think we have to respond. Now, there are three possible ways to get this economy going. And I think that we've got to find a way to relate the actual solutions that are available to us to the protests that are going on across the country. The Tea Party was a remarkable exercise in people-powered politics. Those people who didn't study it closely may not know this. Who wrote, pop quiz. Now, you guys are all political people, right? Listen to NPR? See? Huffington Post? Who wrote the Tea Party jobs agenda? The agenda that they have for the country, for the economy, the Tea Party, most important development in American politics probably in the past couple of years. Who wrote their agenda? Their agenda is called the Contract from America. Who wrote it? Sarah Palin? Dick Armey? David Cope? A church wrote it? You know who wrote it? 50,000 people. It was a wiki. 50,000 people worked on it together, collectively, to produce a document called the Contract from America. The Tea Party itself is not a normal organization in the sense that they used to have them in the last century. It's an open source brand. We have to learn from this. You know what I mean? It's not a normal organization. I mean, you can't fly to Washington, D.C. and get in a cab and say, take me to Tea Party headquarters. Right? And then have the cab drive up to a building, and you get out and it says, Tea Party headquarters. Right? And you buzz on the buzzer, go in, talk to the receptionist, steal a mint. I know how you do. And say, let me talk to the president of the Tea Party. You can't do that. Right? Because there is no headquarters. There is no buzzer. There is no receptionist. There's no mint. There's no president. There's no Tea Party. The Tea Party is an open source brand that 3,528 affiliates use. None of them own. Think about that. 3,528 affiliates use that brand. None of them own it. In fact, they all kept their own names that they had before, but they just put a comma behind their name. These groups, some of them go all the way back to the Ross Perot days. These are not new groups, but they have a new way of operating that lets them have a kind of shareware approach to their politics. And these old groups with fairly old ideas were able to realign themselves with a new brand and move with great force in American politics. There's something remarkable about what they did. There's a hypocrisy in what they did that I think is brilliant. The Tea Party talks rugged individualism. That's their main shtick, right? If you have a problem, don't look to the government. Just be more rugged and more individual, and everything will be just fine. That's their basic thing. So they talk rugged individualism. They've just enacted, though, the most collectivist strategy for taking power in the history of the Republic. 50,000 people working together on a wiki, an open source brand that they share. Now think about that. They talk individualism, but they act collectively in ways that any kindergarten teacher would be proud. Right? Now look at progressives. I hope I don't offend anybody. I don't think we have any progressives here. But if you ever meet one, they talk. You know where I'm going, Omaha. They talk Kumbaya. They talk, can't we all get along? They talk, solidarity forever. They talk collectively. But they tend to act with extraordinary levels of individualism in the extreme. Right? Silos inside of silos, on top of silos. I'm working for the left-handed lesbian of color caucus. Again, it's like, well, I'm sure they deserve one. And that's good. But it's hard to find the common ground sometimes. And so what happens is, and I don't think it's anybody, because if you're in that caucus, I'm for you, I'll write you a check. But the problem is that at some point, the center of the donut, where we come together again, we haven't taken that step until now. Suddenly, a pain threshold got hit. I would go so far as to say that Occupy Wall Street, which, by the way, is as popular, is twice as popular as the Tea Party and is more popular than the President of the United States, more popular than the President of the United States plus the Democrats in Congress, more popular, these young people out here protesting, than the President of the United States plus the Democrats in Congress plus the Republicans in Congress. These young people protesting are more popular with the American people, including Republicans, than the US government. Think about that. I would say that Occupy represents a judgment on the Tea Party too. Now this is where things get deep, and this is where we need to talk. The Tea Party is right to point out that something's wrong in the country, and they're right to point out that the little people are getting mistreated. But there's a problem with the worldview that says they are defending liberty. There are two threats to liberty, not just one. And this is where you are going to have to move forward, I think, as a generation of people. The threat to liberty doesn't just come from excessive concentrations of governmental authority. That's totalitarianism, which we're opposed to. And the Tea Party is very loud about that. They say, we do not want a totalitarian government, neither do we. We appreciate that. But the other threat to liberty they've been quiet on. This is why you see this huge new explosion. The second threat to liberty is not from excessive concentrations of political authority, excessive concentrations of government authority, but from excessive concentrations of economic power. That's where they've been silent. You say, Obama is a socialist. That's their thing. That's a fear that the government is trying to take over the economy. The government is trying to take over the economy. Obama is a socialist. We must defend our liberty. What if it's the other way around? What if the corporations are trying to take over our government? What if Citizens United, that ruling that says that corporations are people and can spend all the money they want to in our elections, what if that is actually the real threat to our liberty? Who will defend us from that threat? And it turns out that people no longer trust the Republicans to do it. They no longer trust the Democrats to do it. They don't trust the White House to do it. And they don't even trust the Tea Party to do it. There is an undefended middle class in America, an undefended working class in America, facing an unopposed demolition of their living standards. And whoever in public life can speak to that pain, not just to stoke it, but to offer solutions, will find a tremendous audience. If you go to Occupy Wall Street in New York, you find Tea Party people down there. You find veterans down there. You find business owners down there. You even find some people who work on Wall Street down there because things have gotten that bad. And so we do have solutions. I'll speak to one, which I'm proud of because I was a part of getting it pulled together, and then we'll take some questions. First of all, before Occupy took off this summer, I decided it was important that people who weren't in the Tea Party but who loved the country to have a chance to speak on their economic vision, their economic hopes. So we said, well, what if we got, instead of that Tea Party crowdsourcing exercise going, what if we got another one going? So we created something called the Contract for the American Dream. We didn't have Fox TV. We didn't have the Koch brothers. All we had was good liberal progressive groups like MoveOn.org and the Center for Community Change and SEIU, Planned Parenthood. But we worked together. For the first time in a long time, we started working together. He said, if they can work together, why don't we work together? And we use them as a foil to get us to work together. You got to do that sometimes in politics. Guess what? We didn't get 50,000 people to work on our jobs agenda. We got 131,203, almost triple the Tea Party number this summer. Progressives and liberals working on solutions. These people have no solutions. They're just protesting. They have no ideas. They're just out there mad. Well, first of all, this movement is not powerless enough to have demands. They're not powerless enough. Powerful people don't have demands. Powerful people have goals. You don't go to talk to the head of somebody on Wall Street and say, well, what are your demands? They say, I don't have demands. I have actual power, so I have some goals. So, well, this movement is growing up, and it has the power of a kind of moral clarity. They don't have message clarity often, but they have moral clarity. And that moral clarity has given them tremendous momentum. But it's actually not true that we're only crowdsourcing a focus on the problem on the left. We also have been able to crowdsource a set of solutions. 131,203 people got together and came up with a coherent jobs agenda called the Contract for the American Dream. You don't know that because we don't have Fox Brothers Fox News to tell you about it. Fox Brothers, Koch brothers. I get confused. But that's true. Tea Party, when they started off, they had 800 house meetings all across the country. We said, why don't we try and do some house meetings? We had 1,597, just 3 shy of double the Tea Party. This summer, this is before Occupy. We said, there's something out there. People are hurting. People want solutions. And so now we are in a new era of American politics. The elites are no longer trusted. I'm not trusted. You're not trusted. People are now turning to on both sides of the aisle, to more people-powered, horizontal politics. And they want a more people-powered economics and people-oriented economics that takes some of the control away from not just from the government, but also from the big corporations. This is new territory. It's a tremendous opportunity for us to stand together. I'll close and take questions from you, but I do think that there is a moral challenge here no matter what side of the political divide you're on. If you think there's something wrong with these protesters, if you think there's something wrong with what they're saying or how they're saying it or how they look when they're saying it, the clothes they're wearing when they're saying it, then you do have a responsibility to explain, and not just to kind of wave at magical tax cuts or whatever, but to explain how these people are going to be able to live indoors. The Occupy movement is fighting in the short term for the right to sleep outdoors, but they stand for a desire for millions of people to keep sleeping indoors. And the people who criticize them have to answer the question now. Have to answer the question, how are these people, as the big fact in the world economy hits home, which is that the middle class in Asia, God bless them, is getting bigger. But the middle class in the West is getting smaller. And the middle class in the United States is getting smaller. And we can no longer have little food fights in Washington, D.C. and pretend we're solving the problem when millions of people know the problem's not being solved. So if you think they're wrong, you have a moral challenge to come forward and explain how the pain they're talking about is going to be alleviated. You don't have people sitting on a white-hot stove for 3 years. We're 3 years into the biggest economic catastrophe since the Great Depression, and nothing's getting better. So you can't tell them that they're wrong, that they're not hollering appropriately. You're out there hollering, where's your proposal for derivatives reform? Are you kidding me? So you got a moral challenge on that side, but we got a moral challenge too. If this movement's going to be anything, and it's got to be something serious, but if it's going to be anything, it can't be the 99% against the 1%. The 99% against the 1%, I don't want to have anything to do with that. It's got to be the 99% standing for the 100%. Now, this is a moral challenge. We need the genius and the creativity of the entire American people to solve these problems. Just because you're a banker doesn't make you the enemy. If you're a bankster, then we got a problem with you. If you're just somebody who understands finance, God bless you, we need that. And if you're working for a credit union, God bless you twice. It's what you do with your genius. If you use it to buy your own rules and buy your own congressperson, if you use it to run a bank that was bailed out by the people, you'd be homeless, except the people bailed you out. And then you, rather than returning the favor, you smother students under debt and won't cut them a break. You smother those homeowners with bad mortgages underwater and won't cut them a break. You won't give that little small business owner, that small farmer, that veteran coming home a loan. You're smothering the country under a debt blanket, choking off capital. You caused the recession, and now you won't let the recovery happen. Well, and you buy Congress to make sure that you stay in that position. You're not a banker now, you're a bankster, and we're opposed to your action, not your person. And we want, this 99% is now standing for the 100%. They have to be a part of the solution. Now, this is hard, but we have a moral example in the young people themselves. When they were pepper sprayed, the young people were out there by themselves, and I had nothing to do with them, neither did you. You thought they were crazy, and, you know, I guess it was good that they were. Because when they got pepper sprayed, those two young women, standing there completely innocent, didn't have a poster, a sign, nothing in their hands, and were pepper sprayed and fell to their knees crying. And the world saw it. They came back the next day. And they said, we are not fighting against the police. We're fighting for them. We're concerned about their pensions. We're concerned about their families. They are a part of the 99% too. That's a moral movement. They're better than me. They're better than most people I work with in Washington, D.C. They're better than anybody in any political party. And we have a tremendous opportunity to stand with them and to be the 99% standing for the 100%. So let's talk about it. Thank you very much.
So we've got plenty of time for question and answers. We have 4 microphones throughout the forum, so I urge you if you have questions. We have our traditions here at the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. Please identify yourself if you have an affiliation with a school or a community, just let us know. Secondly, a question ends in a question mark. And third, it does not contain a speech in the question. So those are our traditions. Tonight we're going to actually try something a little bit different, because we have a lot of folks, and there's also a microphone up there with nobody in line behind it. So if you're near the end of one of these lines, go to the microphone up there. But we're going to do this. We're going to take a couple questions at a time, because we know we're not going to be able to get to everybody. And we thought that maybe some of the questions, Ben can, this is his idea, so if it doesn't work, you'll never see it again in the forum. If it does work, we'll give him the credit. But we're going to do a couple at a time. So if you could just kind of quickly identify yourself, and we'll do, want to try 2 at a time? We'll try these 2 first, and we'll go from there. So right here, gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Luke Scanlon. I'm a student here at the Kennedy School. My background prior to coming here, I was actually a Tea Party leader in Cypress, Texas. And I'm here studying bank finance to understand how to not screw it up later in life.
Thank you.
So my question to you is that someone who comes from a conservative background and a Tea Party person, my goal, rather than to sit on opposite sides of a fence, is trying to figure out where we have common ground. When I have discussion with people that are on the left side here at the Kennedy School, which is most, usually they come away from the conversation surprised that we have more agreement than we have disagreement. And my hope is that somehow, between the rhetoric between people that are conservative, people that are left, Tea Party, your movement, that we can find a chance to put aside the sound bites and get down to real substance. What do you intend, and how are you going to try to step aside from the sound bites? How are you going to try to step aside from the unfortunate jabs that I know occur to reach out and actually cause substantive conversation that gets to the core of the problem?
Yeah, my name is Mike Mon. I'm a joint MBA and Masters of Public Administration here. One thing that you repeated several times is that they don't have Fox or Coke, or the Koch brothers. I kind of reject that argument because they have George Soros and they have MSNBC. So I'm curious, when you say there's no message clarity there, clearly they have avenues that could support them. And I wonder to what extent you think that that lack of clarity of argument is based on the fact that there's not yet a unified purpose beyond complaint, and how this movement can mobilize beyond actually complaining against something and catalyze people to mobilize for something.
You want to go ahead and get these, or you want some more?
That's good. Well, first of all, you know, Luke Skywalker, I've been following you my whole life, and I appreciate you being here. Is that your name? What's your name?
Scanlon.
Oh.
You got it close. It was Luke Skywalker, or
Okay.
Scanlon.
Luke Scanlon. Okay, good. That's a cool name. You said Luke Sk. I was like, really? I've been looking for you my whole life, man. Well, Luke Scanlon asked a great question about common ground. And, you know, I think that we're getting there. Not because of anything the political elites did, who actually, you know, probably benefit more from the food fight than anybody else. But because I just think that neither side in D.C. has solved the problem, and the problem's getting worse. We're probably going to be in a double-dip recession. There'll be finger-pointing over that. So you'll say, well, you spent too much on the stimulus, and people say, well, the stimulus is too small, and we'll be in the same food fight in D.C. Banks are bad shape. They may come back out with their hands held out. And there's going to be a moment again. We'll do 2008 all over again. And we'll have to, but I think there's a dynamic here where there may be some dueling populisms, you know, more Tea Party, more Occupy, but those dueling populisms may be bigger than the dueling parties. And that's going to be a very different scenario, I think, in American politics. You know, I will say this. I've been surprised by how little interest there has been, or how little my sisters and brothers on the right have noticed how eager, I think sometimes even overly eager, Democrats have been to reach out. And I think that there may be something off there where it's really hard, I think, to come to a good deal if one side is absolutely firm and clear and the other side is not. And so what may look like too much partisanship may in fact be a lack of good partisanship, a lack of good clarity, which goes to your point. You know, we'll disagree on the facts in terms of you know, MSNBC versus Fox. You know, frankly, George Soros doesn't give a lot of money in the United States. He just doesn't. And so there's this myth that George Soros, I mean, if you look at the amount of money the Koch brothers put in American politics, if George Soros put that much money in American politics, given the level of organization the left already has, from the community level all the way up, it'd be a totally different playing field. But he just actually doesn't. And so, but I think you're making another point, and that point is the conservative movement has done, I think, a brilliant job of being clear about its politics. So you can say conservative anywhere, and people know exactly what they're buying with that. You know, smaller government, strong defense, family values. It just comes right out the mouth. If you say Democrat right now, are you getting Dennis Kucinich or Larry Summers? Which one are you talking? I mean, that's. You can call it a big tent or you can call it a big mess, but that's the Democratic Party. So, to your point, I think that you make a good point. There's a journey that we have to go on from the complaint to the answer. But let me say this to you, in defense of the people who are out there. Moral clarity matters. Part of what we should all be ashamed of is that when the polls were telling us all summer long that people wanted D.C. to be focused on job creation, not on the default, whatever the default crisis, that people wanted the wars to be wound down in a responsible way and bring the money and the troops home. $3 billion a week, bring it home, help us. The political class in D.C. didn't register it at all. They stayed in that same conversation that it left out so many people that finally people had to go to these kind of measures just to be heard. Now, they've only been out there for 6 weeks. They may not have a PhD level answer in 6 weeks, but I think that it would be wrong, and I think that people are making a mistake to dismiss the level of intelligence they've brought forward already. They have already punctured a very almost ironclad wall that says you cannot criticize Wall Street, you cannot talk about economic inequality, you cannot talk about this sort of hourglass shape in the economy. If you do, you get dismissed as a socialist or a kook. Now, Eric Cantor, one of my favorite politicians, said that economic inequality troubles him. You can Google or use a search engine. You'll never find Eric Cantor and the word economic inequality in the same sentence before these young people. Now, that's genius, right? That's genius. And I think that I think that as they go forward, they will mature. And I don't mean that in some ageist way. I just mean that as things develop, they get more clarity. Also, you're going to see the political class as it exists respond. I think you have to be a nut if you're a Democrat and you don't come out right now and say you're for student loan relief or forgiveness. You're a nut. I think you're a nut if you don't come out and say tax Wall Street speculation, or if we get back in a situation where the banks are struggling again, to at least put on the table breaking them up and making them actually eliminate some of these monopolistic pressures and speculation. So this is early on, you know, break out the popcorn. It's going to be a long not just a movie, but a trilogy as this new generation steps forward and tries to redefine politics.
Let's keep going in pairs. So will these two questioners?
Me first?
Yes, you go for your first.
Hi, Van, you already know me, but I'm going to ask
The
a question.
rest of us don't know you.
But my name is Jocelyn Eastman, and I'm a progressive independent. I work for a number of progressive organizations like the Ella Baker Center and Green for All.
Two great organizations, by the way.
Founded
by a genius.
In Oakland. I'm a junior at the college. I'm studying history and Afghan studies. So my question to you is, as a student, I can't go to Occupy Boston and Occupy Wall Street every day. I just can't.
Yep.
My parents would kill me if I got arrested. So what can students like me, who can't go out every day and hold a picket sign and get pepper spray, do to support Occupy Wall Street and its offshoots?
Good. That's a great question. Occupy Together is the place I think most people are going to get more information and find ways to be helpful. People may not understand the way that Occupy is put together, so just really quickly. There's Occupy Wall Street, which is the people who are actually on Wall Street. All the other occupations are independent and autonomous. There is no national steering committee for the occupation. That's part of its genius, because if there were one, then they would probably either get arrested or bribed, and we'd have Occupy Diet Cola within 3 months. That's just how our system goes. So, but there is no national steering committee, so we won't have that outcome. But rebuildthedream.com is another alternative. There are solutions, and like I said, we had more than 100,000 people work together to come up with some. And the solutions actually that used to be called liberal solutions poll at 50 to 80%. Green jobs still polls 50 to 80%. Infrastructure investment 50 to 80%, depending on how you word it. Taxing Wall Street, ending the Bush tax cuts for wealthy people is like 85%. So the problem that we're having in our country is that with you may disagree, my friend left Mike, but Mike may disagree, but in my world, my little movie I live in, with basically no real fight back on these economic issues, we still have the majority of the country who are open to progressive ideas, but we don't have a mechanism to get those ideas taken seriously. And so rebuildthedream.com supports something called the American Dream Movement. 70 progressive organizations that actually have aligned on an economic agenda. 600,000 people we've signed up since in 3 months in every congressional district. And so I'd encourage you to get involved with us as well.
Hi, over here. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Amy Perlmutter, mid-career 93, long time ago. Hi. I appreciate your comments and as someone who is a progressive, just the fact that this movement is bigger than the Tea Party is reassuring, because I'm worried about this country and I'm worried about what I hear in the polls, which is a little bit different from what you just said. And I thought that something came out through Gallup a week or two ago that said that people were not in favor of repealing the Bush tax cuts. And there seems to be sort of a what's the matter with Kansas mentality in the country, at least from this little bubble of Cambridge, that people see themselves in the 1% even though they're in the 99%. And so if you agree or disagree, I'm just curious of your thoughts on that and how we get people to realize that they are the 99%.
Good question.
We'll try a second one over here.
Sure, thanks. Mark Tomizawa, part of an independent group of consultants across all sectors and silos. Frankly, the big problem is turf. The hardest thing to do in any corporation, let's picture the United States as one big corporation. You wouldn't divide up the corporation into teams that battle each other. You'd divide them up into functioning work groups. And then you'd go at solutions, and then you'd float those by leadership, and you'd then make your decisions. But you'd start with really good solutions that are built on, say, evidence-based policy. Let's go find things that work and build from there. We don't see that happening anywhere. And one of the problems we see is everybody starts out by wearing a penny, a red penny or a blue penny, breaking up into teams, when maybe that team's quarterback is needed with this team's linebackers, right? You start to build other kinds of teams. Who's working on that? Because the policy people are all divided up and down DC. The nonprofits start dividing up. And if we start with that virus, maybe it's hard to put America back together. So who's creating a place that's based on great evidence-based policy that's built around function, and floating that and saying, how do the candidates respond to that?
Well, two questions. I'll try to answer them both quickly so we can get a few more. I mean, your question is, where are the American people, and why do the American people sometimes not vote or register opinions based on what you might imagine, I might imagine are their self-interest? I mean, the polling data that I've seen is actually more encouraging than discouraging. And well, frankly, by the time Warren Buffett comes out and says, "Tax me," I mean, it gives you a sense of where the country is. I think 56% of Republicans are saying to raise taxes on the wealthy rather than close down these schools, et cetera. So I mean, the country's a lot better than the country's a lot more balanced. I think the country is ready to raise some revenues. Billionaires, big oil, the wars, those kind of places where the tax breaks have been going and a lot of money. I think people are ready for a change on that, and I don't think you have to run through the same bug zappers anymore to point out that we shouldn't be giving the big oil, which is the most lucrative business on the planet, still big tax breaks and subsidies. That's not you don't have to run through a bug zapper on that. At least you can go to a laundromat. And now, if you're on a Sunday talk show, you might get beat up. But you can go to a laundromat or a sports bar or any place in America and say, geez, Wall Street and Halliburton and the big oil companies are getting away with murder. Nobody's going to throw anything at you. They'll say, yeah, keep talking. So I think the country's in better shape on that. Now, to your point with regard to policy stuff, there's all kind of bipartisan, I disagree with you. There's all kind of bipartisan working groups. They don't get anything done, and I'll tell you why they don't. There's this thing called politics, which is different than policy. And until we find a way to make the politics work better, in other words, where people are afraid they're going to get primaried if they don't cooperate with the other side, as opposed to you get primaried if you do cooperate with the other side, then we're going to see the same logjam that we've got there. But we're working on that. Let's talk about it later.
Let's do two more, and since we still have several folks standing, if the questions can be a little more concise, we can get to everybody. These two up on the loge.
Y'all are smart. She ran up there before you got there. Go ahead.
Hi, Van. My name is Noelle Janka, and I work here at the Kennedy School. But in my other life, I'm a grassroots organizer. I did Green Corps program. I worked on the Obama campaign. But I've been really depressed, also very excited about the Occupy movement. But because of my organizing background, I just can't help but think about the strategy. Like, what is our strategy? What are we thinking about doing 3 months from now? And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your plans with Rebuild the Dream and how we're going to work with this broken political system that ostracizes so much of our country, and what this election might look like, and are people actually going to vote, and that kind of thing. Thank you.
All right, so you made a kind of a joke earlier about the derivatives, like you're out here protesting, but where's your derivatives reform? But I think a lot of people on Wall Street, I'm a student in the college, and a lot of my friends, a lot of people graduate and go on to Wall Street, and I ask them, what do y'all think about the movement? And they say, oh, we laugh at them. We think it's a joke. And I think a lot of the reason people, the elite or how you want to label them, don't respect Occupy Wall Street is kind of two reasons. There's no really proposal or solution. It just seems that there just really isn't one. And also, there doesn't really seem to be a thing that underlies all of them beyond, we're all upset about something. And I think, I agree with you in the sense that it's kind of too early to contextualize it, and it's too much to expect of like a 3-6-month-old movement to have that. But
6-week-old movement.
Yeah, 6-week-old movement to have that. But, 3 months, a year, 6 months, a year from now, when, they don't have that excuse anymore, what do you think a proposal looks like? What do you think, something that underlies them looks like? Because, abolitionists came in all shapes and sizes, but they all wanted, to get rid of slavery. Civil rights, people who were in the civil rights movement came in all shapes and sizes, but what underlies all of them is that they all wanted, to end segregation, end Jim Crow. But it seems right now, you have all these people, and what underlies them is, we're all upset about something or another, and people don't respect that.
Good enough. Wait, one more?
Yeah, let's try one. Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay, I'm Allie. I'm an undergraduate here, and I've been down to Occupy doing like environmental stuff, and I've had labor guys come up to me and be like, hey, you're protesting my job. So you talked a bit about like getting the progressive movement to work together better. So how do you suggest we do that with issues like the labor guys need jobs right now, but climate change has a really tight deadline? So how do you suggest we go forward with that, with Occupy?
That's good. Well, I have an answer for that one, so I'll do that one last. Well, first of all, my sister who was working as an organizer, a couple of things. One, we went from Hopi, you remember that? Everybody was all Hopi, 2008, right? We went from Hopi to Mopey, right? Real fast. You said you were depressed. We went from Hopi to Mopey, and we forgot to build that big fight back in the middle, right? Where we weren't just chasing the White House and hoping the White House would listen to us, but we forgot to build a movement the White House would have to chase. And that's what's beginning to happen now, is that you're starting to see things that happen that don't fit the script. And I think that is a very good thing. Both of the two questions have to go, what is the strategy going to be? Well, I think that I can't speak to that. I'm not a part of Occupy. I'm a fan of Occupy. I'm awestruck by what they've been able to achieve. They represent, but just by the way, if people don't pay attention to this stuff, this is a swarm. Those of you who do network theory, starfish and the spider, this is a for real swarm. Arab Spring was a swarm, right? This is a for real swarm. And swarms don't function like normal organizations. They don't function, they don't have Robert's Rules of Order, they don't function like coalitions. This is something that we have to get smart enough to understand how to interact with. And I'm learning. And when it comes to Occupy, I'm not a leader, I'm a learner. I can tell you what I think makes sense. What I think makes sense is a lot of stuff that's in our contract, which I encourage you to look at, the contract for the American dream. I think we're going to have to do two things. One, we're going to have some smart Keynesianism. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not convinced that when you have these kinds of concentrations of wealth, where we're not recirculating it. The problem is, first of all, just let me say a couple things. There's a misunderstanding, I think, that a lot of the people who are out there just don't like capitalism. They just don't like a system where you have winners and losers. They just want everybody to be kind of like sitting around. That's not actually why people are mad. That's not why I'm mad. I like winning. Let's just be clear. I'm as competitive as anybody in this room. I like winning. I hate a rigged game. See, that's what's making people upset. It's not the sense that you got winners and losers. It's the sense that the game is rigged and that you don't actually have fair competition. I mean, in the energy sector, which we'll get you to the last point, we definitely feel that if you want a free market in energy, we're with you. But that ain't what we got. In the energy sector, what we've got is monopoly control by the carbon burners, and everybody else is competing against the fact that they get direct subsidies, they get support from the Pentagon to bring their for-profit private product here called oil, and they get to pollute for free. That's a massive set of subsidies for the carbon burners. They get to pollute for free. If you get a ticket for littering, you can't pollute for free. If you go out here and litter right now, you'll get a $25 fine. That's $25 more than the big carbon polluters have ever paid in 150 years since the Industrial Revolution for all the carbon they've dumped. So they get a massive subsidy. They don't have to pay to pollute. You have to pay when you pollute. They don't. The Pentagon spends 70% of its budget trying to help them get their for-profit private product here, and they get subsidies. People say, we believe in the free market. I do too. I believe in it so much, I'd like to see one. I'd like to see a free market in the energy sector. Okay, so there's a big misunderstanding about a lot of this stuff. But I like to win. But if you rig the game, you divide the playground. If you rig the game, you divide the playground, and eventually kids stop playing or they start acting up, and that's what we see. That's what we see happening right here. Now, for me, I'm old-fashioned. People, sometimes I don't think our grandparents were stupid. I'm sorry. I just don't think our grandparents were stupid. I think when our grandparents put Glass-Steagall into place to keep Wall Street from becoming a casino, I think they knew what they were doing. I don't think our grandparents were stupid. I think all those rules, I call them depression protection, right? All those depression protection regulations on Wall Street that were taken off the books when nobody was looking by both political parties, Democrats and Republicans, said it would be a great idea to take our grandparents' wisdom and throw it in a garbage can and let Wall Street run itself like a casino. I'm old-fashioned. I think our grandparents were right. And so I think that the first step is to re-regulate Wall Street and to make sure that bankers can act like bankers and get capital to productive purposes and not just make money off of making money. The most impressive innovations in American society shouldn't be how you make money off of money. It should be how you make products that help people, or at least products that people can understand. That's the problem. And so I think that what you're going to see is there are proposals, there are solutions out there, but nobody cared about them. The people with those proposals, like me and others, will get a bigger hearing now. And so it won't be that the people out there protesting are going to come up with a great proposal. It's that the people who are out there protesting will get attention to the people who have proposals. And that is the way that this thing is going to ultimately shake out. Somebody said that what was your name? What was your name? Allie said that she was out there trying to help the planet, and it turned out she was hurting the people because the construction workers said, "You're putting me out of a job," and she just got confused. Is that right?
I think that's how she said it.
Yeah. Welcome to my world, okay? The short answer on that, because I want to make sure others get a chance to talk, is that we should put those construction workers back to work doing things that will actually help us beat climate change. We can beat the global recession and global warming at the same time. We can fight poverty and pollution at the same time by putting people to work, putting up the solar panels, building the wind turbines, making our homes more energy efficient, bringing agriculture away from the big agribusiness model that's incredibly carbon intensive and poison intensive, and bringing that stuff closer in to cities, bringing the food closer to the plate. All of these things can be done, and they can be done on a for-profit basis. But here's the thing. Markets, which are great. I like my iPad. I don't think a government committee could have given me my iPad. I like my iPad, okay? I like markets. I like markets doing what they do. Government has to do what it does. Community does what it does. Individuals do what they do. But on the market side, I like markets when they come up with cool stuff. But markets work according to rules. And right now, the rules are wacky. The rules are wacky in energy. The rules are wacky in finance. The rules are wacky with regard to our food system. And as long as we have wacky rules, then the markets are going to give us things that we don't want, like poison in our food and asthma for our kids, and Wall Street making money off of making money as opposed to helping entrepreneurs make products. And people are going to be mad. And it's going to be up to us to do our role as elites, which is to translate the pain into proposals. Translate the pain into a politics that can actually solve the problem. And I think that there is enough genius in this country to be able to do that and to do it well.
This may have to be our last bundle of questions, so ask it quickly, and we'll try to get as many answers. We'll start here, and we'll go through a couple of them.
Mr. Jones, my name is Jack Cashin. I'm a junior at the college, and I was wondering what your thoughts were about the conflict last night between Occupy Oakland and the police, and also what happens when cities around the country stop letting occupiers occupy the land that they're on.
That's a good, concise question. Yeah. Let's keep it up. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa King. I was a mid-career student here last year, and I'm a fellow at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy this year. And I've just been doing a lot of tweeting and Facebooking about the Occupy movement, and I've been struck by, this is just anecdotal observation, the lack of response by the hundreds of my Harvard peers who are friends of mine on Facebook, and that it seems to be the people outside of Harvard who are the ones that are commenting on the stuff that I'm posting. And it made me think about the moral imperative and the fact that the 1% is represented really well at Harvard, or people that want to be part of the 1%. And how would you speak to this next generation of leaders coming up here at the Kennedy School and around Harvard about the moral imperative? Like, what specifically are you wanting to point out about the division and the potential consequences of that?
Why don't we take these last two, and then we'll... no, you're not just standing? All right, take this last one.
My name is Bob Romano, and I have a company in Boston called Frugal Furniture. We have a number of stores, and I was here last week when Governor Rondell was here, and Todd Gitlin, and he spoke about the same conversation. So I took out of that meeting that there's an opportunity for corporations to actually make a difference and be within your movement. And I ran an ad in the Metro, a 4-page ad, saying that as a corporation we agree with Occupy movement, and we distributed them among Occupy Boston, which they weren't really too interested in reading, which is a little different movement now than it was when it first started. The people, and it was brought to my attention from this ad. Someone sent me on the website of Ben & Jerry's, they have a full page. Their front page is they support the Occupy movement. So my question is, do you think that you could get behind a movement, figure out a movement where corporations would actually be part of the 99? Because as far as I can see, I've got a lot of compliments from individuals working within corporations, which reminded me when you said there are people, bankers on Wall Street, there are people working on Wall Street who are in the movement. I think that corporations need, you need one big corporation where the CEO says, I'm going to take, instead of $10 million, I'm going to take $1 million, and he sends a letter to his stockholders saying, would you be getting behind the Occupy movement? So I want to know if what you think, if that's a realistic
Those are three goal. Good, diverse questions. Unfortunately, that is going to have to be the last three. I apologize.
That's good. Thank you. Well, three great questions. I'll take a shot at them. Before I do, I want to point out that I'll save it. Let me say this about Oakland. My heart was broken to see the I think excessive response on the part of the Oakland Police Department last night. There were women, children, pregnant people, pregnant women. As best I know, I think that's still where we are technologically. But I mean, people in wheelchairs. I mean, people saw the pictures, I'm sure. And there was tear gas and rubber bullets and that kind of stuff. It's just not appropriate. Here's the thing. I don't mean to offend anybody. The people who tend to congregate around Occupy Wall Street are not necessarily big strapping football playing type of guys. I mean, it's really kind of more like you don't have to have thousands of cops in ninja suits to deal with them. They're not those kind of people. They tend to be, if anything, more on the small side, more nerdy people like myself. So I just think that that is bad. And what I'll say about it is the occupations themselves now have a special character. It used to be, somebody just sitting at a lunch counter at one point would have been a completely neutral act. But there was a moment in American history where to sit in at a lunch counter was the most important political statement that could be made. And there was a need to respect that. Or burning a bra. If somebody burned their bra, maybe they didn't like their bra at some point, but at a certain point that became a political statement. People wanting to put up tents in public spaces is a political statement. And it needs to be handled with some respect for the First Amendment implications of that. Doesn't mean they can do whatever they want to, but there needs to be a certain level of respect, and we didn't see it last night in Oakland. I think that that's unfortunate. The question about corporations and corporate involvement, this is critical. See, I don't think that the old categories are working. If you look at what would actually solve the problem, what would solve the problem? Well, first of all, corporations themselves, corporations themselves shouldn't be allowed to participate in our political system as people. That has to be reversed. The idea that money is speech and corporations are people. I saw a bumper sticker that says, "I'll believe a corporation is a person when Texas executes one," right? That's, right? So that has to be reversed. Otherwise, we're just on the road to plutocracy. There's nothing you can do about it. So there's some big reforms we got to do. But now, that said, how are you going to solve the problem? See, the old politics says, we're for markets. Well, we're for government. Well, we're for markets. Well, we're for government. That wasn't what our grandparents were talking about. Right? They understood very clearly, if you want to have an America that works, you got to fight against the worst in corporations. But you got to stick up for the best. You got to fight against the worst in government, but you got to stick up for the best. You got to fight against the worst at the community level, my community organizer friend, but stick up for the best. And you got to insist that everybody do their personal best and contribute. That is a politics that can work. Everything about government is not good, but it's not bad either. Everything about corporations is not good, but it's not bad either. My friend earlier was talking about the need for us to have some common ground. That's real common ground. We've got great entrepreneurs in this country. You never hear about them. America's government should be on the side of our problem solvers in the economy, not the problem makers. We have great green entrepreneurs. I was just in Silicon Valley yesterday. There are people out there who care so much about the pain that people are going through, entrepreneurs with new corporations. Their whole corporations are based on helping people help each other. Things like Kickstarter and Kiva and all these new models where they said, listen, incomes are going down, but we can maybe bring standards of living up if we were a nation of neighbors and we started using all these technologies to begin to share and you don't have to spend as much money because you can actually be able to use the resources better together. For instance, I didn't know this, I will share it with you. How many of you have in your home or in your parents' home a power drill? A power drill. How many times in the past week have you used it? Oh, you used it, yeah, we got 2, that's good. Right. Do you know how many minutes the average power drill is used before it's thrown away? 3. Zzz. Zzz. I mean, what if there's some way for us to share them? Right? So will it be bad for the economy? Well, it'll be bad for the economy in one way, but it also might free up some money to go to things that are more productive. That's the genius of entrepreneurship. And we've got to be able to include that in this movement. The last thing I'll say is just about young people. I have here, and I didn't know she was going to be here, but when I was a young person, a young law student at Yale, let's see, I tricked you. I went to public schools for undergraduate. I went to fancy school for law school. So I'm equally uncomfortable everywhere, see? But when I was a law student, there was a young attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights where I worked, and she took young people very seriously. And she spent a ton of time with me, I was lost and afraid and never been in a big city before, New York City. And she helped me on my way. And she took young people very seriously, and I do too. Her name is Suzanne Shindy. She's sitting right there. Give her a round of applause. Wave your hand, Suzanne. I haven't seen her for almost 10 years, so I'm happy to be here with you. But the young people now, and I want to close with this, the young people now should be taken even more seriously. And I'll tell you why. The last time you had a big generational bulge come through American society, they were called the baby boomers. And when they turned into teenagers and got in their early 20s, they changed America permanently. Right? We had 227 years of enslavement, or maybe more, and 100 years of Jim Crow. Think about that. We had to fight a civil war to go from enslavement to apartheid. Okay, that was you had a long way to go to get to a real democracy in our country. But these young people, February 1st, 1960, started sitting in. And between 1960 and 1970, the country is completely unrecognizable. From 1959 to 1969, it's a different country. Why? Because of those young people. The millennial generation is bigger than the baby boomers. Get that. Bigger than the baby boomers. They're more diverse ethnically, culturally, and otherwise. They're more technologically savvy. They're essentially born connected. They're more ecologically conscious. They're more communitarian in their values than any generation of Americans. When they stood up, 2008, they made history. They sat down, 2010, they made history the other direction. Now they're standing up. They're standing up out here at Occupy Wall Street. They're standing up with 350.org, which is, as an environmental organization, I think they got like 4 staffers, and they do like global events, and you know, they're completely rewriting the rules of politics, of how NGOs are supposed to work. They're horizontal rather than vertical. They're distributed. They share. This is an extraordinary generation, and many of you are a part of it or close enough to it to understand its power and its impact. And what we have to do, those of us who are a little bit older now, and those of us who are a part of the establishment, have to be willing to go from being leaders to learners. This generation has a ton to teach all of us about how to do more with less when it comes to money, and big grants and that kind of stuff, how to go around systems. They see a system, they automatically think they have the right to tinker with it, to hack into it, to make it better, to improve it, to personalize it. What if government worked that way? What if government services worked that way? That's where we're headed. We're headed to a much more resilient democracy out of all of this chaos, and a much more people-friendly, planet-friendly economy out of all the creativity that will be unleashed by this crisis and the response of a new generation to it. Those of you who are here, who are part of that generation, I salute you. Those of you who are here, who are learning from it, please share the information. For those of us who don't tweet as much as we should and actually read essays, I'd like to have more information about it, and I thank you very much for your time.
That's me, like, sister,